Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the witnesses being here today in attendance. Ms. Mueller, are you familiar with the ATF's zero tolerance policy that was implemented by Biden's ATF?
I have heard of it.
What are some of the consequences of taking these aggressive enforcement actions, do you think?
Well, I'll begin with, I'm a professional shooter, I'm not an FFL, but what I do understand, and I hear from people who are FFLs, is that the Biden administration and the way they went to, it wasn't a partnership anymore, it was more of an adversarial relationship, and therefore it really hurt the relationship between the FFLs and the ATF. So I think it was a mistake, and not really going after the right target.
Yeah, I mean, they're usually our front lines, right? I mean, they're keeping prohibited buyers off of the purchasing rolls, if you will. So I would think working with the ATF would be beneficial, but often I think it looked like it was adversarial, and some of the FFLs were targeted in many ways, I think, by the ATF. So it was counterproductive. Really what they were intended to do and what they should have been doing, maybe it's two different things. And I think it sends a wrong message a lot of times. So tell me, I've got a wife and two daughters. They're both concealed carry. Tell me how being able to carry a firearm really, it levels the playing field for our female folks who are on the streets in dangerous situations. Tell us a little bit about that. How does that help?
It really does level the playing field and give us a chance. I believe that the people that advocate for gun control are doing it with good intentions, but they're doing it from a place of privilege. If you don't think that you need the Second Amendment and you don't think that you need to carry a firearm or have training or have self-defense as a defense, then you're coming from a place of privilege. You're not living in a community that is plagued with violence. You're not living in a community that needs to have that kind of security. So I would check your privilege and say that the Second Amendment is what gives everyone the right to be safe.
And I would agree with that. I think very often, you know, the left in the country wants to disarm its citizens, and then at the same time they often, you know, call for defunding the police. And you put those citizens in a tough spot because you don't want them armed to defend themselves. And in many cases, the DAs and AGs in those communities were turning criminals loose with a slap on the wrist, basically, sometimes just cash bail. And so I think it puts those folks in those communities in grave danger. Mr. McDermott, I noticed Memorial Day weekend in Chicago, you said, well, there was actually the statistics where 34 were shot, 8 were killed, and the youngest was a 20-year-old. And you said in Chicago, we're seeing more and more gun purchases, but why are we seeing that? What's going on?
Well, quite frankly, the reason we're seeing more people purchasing firearms is because there's such an emphasis on defunding the police. There's so many different rules and regulations put in place to restrict what police can and can't do. With respect to, for example, carjackings, which are a very significant crime in Chicago, they're very often being taking place. And we are now saying the police can't, or not just now, but we've been saying police can't pursue these vehicles after a certain speed. There's no way for people to be able to protect themselves, there's no way for people to really feel a particular comfort in the police being able to protect them from these types of dangers. They're seeing it. It's constantly on the news. It's constantly in their face, and more people are purchasing firearms to be able to defend themselves. And I think a big issue here, a lot of people direct the issue towards guns. There's not an issue with guns. The issue is with criminals, and we continue to empower criminals on a daily basis. We continue to write laws that help criminals to get away with more crime, and to disable at the same time those law-abiding citizens that are being put in a position where they're forced to defend themselves.
Great. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields.